They keep coming out of nowhere. Mosquitoes are among the most common insects globally, with over 2,500 species buzzing, annoying, and biting people. It seems like you can't escape their silent presence and their incognito nibbles wherever you go. However, there is one place you can go where you don't have to sleep under a protective net or keep bug spray next to you. Drumroll, please. Ta-da! Iceland! This European country is isolated from many other places and is home to some rowdy volcanoes and beautiful landscapes. The best part of it all is that you can enjoy your trip without worrying about those little pests. Scientists have been wondering why there aren't any mosquitoes there, even though the cold isn't a deal-breaker for mosquitoes to thrive. They prefer a wet, humid environment instead of the extreme north and south of the planet. But this isn't stopping them from reproducing in cold places. It's just Iceland that mosquitoes aren't particularly fond of. Some scientific theories include the freezing temperatures. Just because mosquitoes can reproduce in Iceland doesn't mean they like it there. Another theory is the chemical composition of the country's soil and water. The little critters can't adapt to it for a breeding ground. The main factor at hand is the temperature and the oceanic climate. Mosquitoes lay their eggs in bodies of water. When the eggs hatch and the larvae emerge, they have to thaw out. This will allow them to repeat the cycle. In Iceland, 3 major freezes and thaws happen every year. Mosquitoes wouldn't be able to survive through those. You would also expect neighboring territories like Greenland, Great Britain, and Norway to be hostile to mosquitoes, but this isn't the case. Plenty of these buzzers live and thrive there. Once, a mosquito managed to sneak into Iceland on a plane from Greenland. Sadly, or luckily, it's for you to decide, it didn't make it due to the conditions. Mosquitoes can travel large distances, but the closest source would be Norway or Scotland, which are too far away for them to fly on their own. Iceland is free from mosquitoes, but it doesn't seem it will be so forever. Scientists have reported 400 new insect species in the past 30 years. It could mean that either the insects are adapting to different climates or the climates are changing for insects to thrive. Out of the 2,500 species of mosquitoes, more than 30 live in Britain and Scandinavia. It might be only a matter of time before they adapt and populate Iceland. These particular species would be capable of thriving in Iceland, but for now, the locals can enjoy the blissful freedom of smooth skins. Now, Iceland may seem far away, but that's nothing compared to Svalbard. This island is the northernmost populated place in the world. While here, no one talks about mosquitoes as a threat, but you might want to watch out for polar bears. Yup, the biggest carnivores on Earth are the biggest threat to people daily. You can walk around town and see signs that say, "Watch out for polar bears." The island hardly has 3,000 people living on it. It's composed of more than 50 nationalities, mainly working in mining. You can visit a Thai restaurant in freezing temperatures or buy some imported goods from a local grocery store. Now, you have to be well protected whenever you go out. They recommend keeping your car running and unlocked if you step outside for a while. The reason is that if a polar bear pops out of nowhere, you can safely run inside your car to protect yourself. And the polar bears, can't drive. Now, polar bears aren't the only creatures you'll find on this island. You can find some walruses, foxes, puffins, and penguins there. Sad news, guys, we are outnumbered in this world. Yes, there are almost 8 billion people, but that's nothing compared to ants. They might be small in size, but strong in numbers. As individuals, ants can carry hundreds of times their weight. Now, we don't know the exact number of ants roaming around, but scientists can guess that there are between 10 trillion to 100,000 trillion of them. Unlike mosquitoes, ants are very useful for the environment. They spread seeds and can help get rid of things that harm nature. They build deep tunnels which can house millions of their kind. Every ant belongs to a colony and remains loyal to one. It's often we see ants marching one by one, scavenging for food outside the colony. They rarely get lost and know exactly who is part of their colony. If they encounter other ants, they won't be too friendly. Instead, ants would rather remain close to their brothers to serve their main purpose and protect their queen. That's what they're born to do. You can find some ants that come in different sizes. The smaller ones usually take care of the queen and the babies. The regular-sized ones are considered to be the worker or scavenger ants. They build tunnels to house the babies and protect the queen as she roams around the tunnel. The larger ants protect the colony from any imposing danger outside, like some large insects or another ant colony that decided to expand their food search. Some ants pack a nasty bite, while some will just invade your picnic. And yes, in case you've been wondering, there are ants all the way in Iceland as well. And there can be ants in your pants as well. Okay if I tell you there's one insect that can survive just about anything, including radiation? The one that can survive anywhere and is a champion at endurance. Can you guess its name? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the cockroach. These guys mostly like dark corners and seldom go out in plain sight. They're the super insects that would win gold if there was an Insect Olympics. They crawl really fast and occasionally fly. And if you think you can escape from them in the water, then think again. These creepy crawlers can hold their breath submerged in water for 40 minutes, which is longer than what most humans can do. They are one of the many insects that can last for a long time without food. They're cold-blooded, meaning their bodies need external heat to warm up. While they can go for a while foodless, they need water and can only last about a week without it. That's why roaches like to live in humid or moist locations, like bathrooms, basements, kitchens, or anywhere that has pipes and running water. They're experts in adapting to their environments. If you find one, then most likely there are dozens, if not hundreds more, somewhere nearby. If they're infesting your home, experts recommend finding and getting rid of the source they come from. Throw out the trash regularly and make sure to clean up everywhere you eat. Make sure no breadcrumbs are scattered for cockroaches or ants to pick up. If you see any holes where the vermin can crawl out, then seal them up immediately. Any entry point can be trouble for you, especially if they're next to watery places. If mosquitoes have around 2,500 different species, cockroaches are in a whole other league with more than 4,000 kinds worldwide. There's so many and also very, very old. Some fossils suggest the first of their kind were here more than 280 million years ago, unlike me. Throughout history, they survived many major natural disasters and remained on top. They're some of the few creatures that have made it since then. Some places near the Sahara Desert shouldn't only watch out for the heat waves, but also for the locust swarms. These creatures can travel for miles across countries and eat up everything along the way. Even though they can jump long distances, they have wings to fly. They usually land on large crop farms and eat everything up, leaving nothing behind. You can mostly find them in Africa, but they can also fly to places in the Middle East and Asia. Desert locust swarms aren't just creepy, they can affect the economy and people's livelihood. Each one can eat its weight in crops and leave devastating aftermath. Hey, compared to that, mosquitoes don't seem so bad now, do they? So, you hungry, but not quite ready to eat a 3-course meal just yet? How about some instant noodles instead? The water's boiled, your tummy's rumbling, but there's a problem. The styrofoam cup's broken and the noodles are exposed. Wait, is that a space at the bottom of the cup? Why? That space is for protecting the noodles. It's not the company trying to save money or anything. Notice how the ramen in cups is hardly ever broken, but the one in the packet comes out looking like a mess? This technique is called a middle suspension. The noodles are packed in tightly to stop them from getting crushed in the delivery truck. It's not just about the noodles looking nice and long. It also helps those tasty noodles soften more easily. Now, morning breath isn't the best. Luckily, there's an easy way to get rid of it. Yeah, it would have been easy to think that mouthwash was invented for, washing your mouth. Well, mouthwash was originally invented and sold as a floor cleaner. It was sold to hospitals as an antiseptic for years. It never really took off. Some genius in marketing rebranded it as a mouthwash, and the rest is minty fresh history. So, after you've cleaned your teeth, just remember, rebranding can be pretty powerful. It's hard to imagine a world without the internet these days. No streaming, no online games, or pictures of cute little kitties. Yeah, that's not what it was designed for, but who cares, right? The prototype internet was called ARPANET, or the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network. This machine was very sensitive. To stop anyone from turning it off, some clever scientists stuck a piece of paper on it with these powerful words. "This machine is a server. Do not power it down." It was written in red ink. Hey, nice touch. Having your professor scribbling in the margins of your notebook isn't exactly new, except that margins weren't designed for that. They're rat protection. Back in the day, rats would nibble on paper all the time. So if you wrote something on the edge of the paper, it ended up inside a hungry rat. A couple of well-placed lines stopped your best answers from getting eaten. Hey, I can't finish this pizza. Time to cover up those leftovers. Luckily, I have plenty of plastic wrap. A little tug, and the roll just jumped out. Prison break! If you look at the wrap's home, the long, thin box, there's a special little feature that can help you. A cardboard tab on each end. Push them in, and the roll's not going anywhere. Strange that I've never seen them before. It's lunchtime. I'm feeling like a California roll today. Seaweed, rice, cucumber, avocado, and crab meat. Or is it? It's actually imitation crab meat. It's basically cheap white fish blended with sugar. The fish mixture is then heated and pressed into shape. Yummy! That's maybe why it's called the hot dog of the sea. Nah, I just made that up. Your microwave has a secret we've all seen, but never paid attention to. That black mesh you see on the door is a Faraday cage. It stops the electromagnetic energy, or the microwaves, from escaping. And cooking you, too. That's how it heats up your food so quickly. Every microwave has to have one, and they all vary in quality. This Faraday cage can even stop signals from your phone, which I guess is useful. Hey, you don't need your popcorn to stop popping in order to take a call, do you? Airplane mode's a bit easier, though. Ever taken an IQ test and realized you're Einstein-level smart? Me neither. The median IQ is only 100, plus there's very little evidence that Einstein ever even took the test. In the beginning, most people thought the tests were too vague to be helpful in any way. The test was designed for children who needed help with their studies. Later, they realized it could be adapted to identify intelligence, but it was never originally designed for that. Hey, never pop bubble wrap, you're missing out. And, you guessed it, it was never meant to be popped or used in the way we use it today. It was invented as a new textured wallpaper. By sealing two shower curtains together, they created the first bubbles. The idea never really took off, obviously. After failing as wallpaper, it discovered its true meaning in life. It could protect sensitive items. When the first computers were being shipped, bubble wrap was there to help. Imagine a house with bubble wrap wallpaper in every room. Best or worst thing ever? Hey, leave me a comment below. If you owned one of the biggest companies in the world, selling one of the most known products on the planet, how would you keep your company's secret a secret? The formula for Coca-Cola isn't patented. The first recipe was, but when they made changes, no patent ever went through. The secret formula is still only known by a few people at the company. Not only that, but not even Coca-Cola's rival wants the recipe. In 2006, a disgruntled employee tried to sell off the secret, but it didn't work. Hey, take a look at your brand new mattress. Do you see the "Do Not Remove Under Penalty of Law" tag? Wow, that thing looks pretty serious. Good news though, the tags aren't meant for you. They're aimed at the mattress seller. 100 years ago, mattress makers used to create the filling with basically anything. Animal hair, old hospital beds, or clothing. Then strict laws stopped old hospital beds from being used. Their mattresses were filled with germs. Now, on a rainy day, Play-Doh is something everyone can make at home. Mash up some flour, water, salt, food coloring, and wham! Any creative person is amused for hours. Cheap, clean, non-toxic, the perfect modeling clay. But it was never made for that. This stuff was originally for cleaning up walls in the 1930s. That's because people started going crazy for wallpaper, which you couldn't use soap and water on. Eventually, Play-Doh had to find a new home. Now, have you ever finished a lollipop and noticed a hole in the stick? This hole isn't just for show or to make a musical instrument with after you're done. It's there to keep that tasty sweet treat from falling off. While the candy's still hot, it's poured into a mold. As it hardens, the candy flows into the hole and creates an anchor. Oh, not into lollipops? How about good old American gummy bears? Unfortunately, they aren't American at all. They're German. A German company started making them in 1922. The original name was Gummy something something. Anyway, they got the inspiration from real dancing bears at live shows. These treats eventually made it all the way around the world. Hey, ever wondered what those little bumps were for on the F and J keys on your keyboard? These little raised ridges are to help your index fingers be in the best possible spot for lightning-fast typing. Keeping those fingers on F and J, it makes it way easier to reach all the keys, especially if you don't look at the keyboard. Now, everybody loves a Slinky. If you've ever watched one of them strut down the stairs with groovy music in the background, congrats, you're definitely a YouTube fan. People of all ages loved it when it came out, which is crazy because it was never meant to be a toy at all. It's a spring. It was originally designed to stabilize sensitive nautical devices on ships. Nothing fun about that at all. Until that amazing day when one of them fell off a table and danced its way into our hearts. After many experiments, the new and improved Slinky was born. Give that team of scientists a medal. Now, that little pocket on your jeans wasn't designed for loose change or keys. It was originally made to store your pocket watch. You don't have a pocket watch? How is that possible? They were all the rage in the 1890s. But that's not all that makes your old pair of jeans interesting. Look around the pocket areas. You'll see rivets sticking out. No, they're not some cool fashion idea from the past. These rivets serve a very crucial role. They help protect the sensitive areas of the jeans that get the most wear and tear. Back in the day, most people wore jeans to do hard manual labor, so they needed to be tough. If those guys back then saw you paying $100 for a pair of ripped jeans, they'd probably pass out from shock.
Sandwich bread is not entirely real bread. Water can boil and freeze at the same time. Bananas are berries that grow in grass. Believe these or not, but let me ask you, did you know water can be wetter than it is in nature? Find out in this video. Bubblegum is usually pink because the first commercial gum, made in 1928, was like that. Pink simply was the only color of the food dye available at the factory. The first chewing gum ever, though, probably appeared about 9,000 years back. People chewed birch bark tar back then for its medicinal properties, for example, to fight fever. In fact, at different periods, people used to chew on lots of stuff. For instance, the ancient Mayans made gum out of chicle, a substance made from the sapodilla tree sap. They used it to fight hunger and quench thirst. And in North America, people chewed spruce tree resin, a habit which European settlers later picked up and turned into a commercial thing in the 1840s. You can't name a folder CON on any version of Windows. This also applies to some other letter combinations, such as PRN, AUX, NUL, and others. It has to do with the operating system itself. It creates folders to store data in them. And if you create one of your own using one of these names, it will confuse the system. If you shuffle a deck of cards to get every possible combination, you'll spend billions upon billions upon billions of years just to get a third of the way there. Think about it. There are 52 cards in a regular deck. And the possible number of combinations without repeating is 8 times 10 raised to the power of 67. Even if you shuffled the cards 100 times per second without repeating combinations, it will take you several hundreds of trillions of the times the universe has existed so far. Folding a simple sheet of paper 103 times will get you a stack 93 billion light years thick, which is more than the size of the observable universe. But if you decide to check this on your own, you won't be able to fold it more than 12 times. And that would require a really big sheet of paper too, as in almost a mile long. With a regular printing paper sheet, it would be even less, 7 times. In many supermarkets, you'll see 2 different bread sections, bread and bakery, and they do have different types of bread in them. The lighter, square, and most often cut in advance variety is called white pan bread, or sandwich bread, while the other is, well, just bread. The difference is that sandwich bread is made specifically to have stuff spread on it. It has a tougher texture, which allows the slice to not fall apart and go all crumbly when you put, say, peanut butter on it. It's also soft enough, letting you bite into your sandwich and not squeeze the contents out of the sides, turning your meal into a mighty mess. Finally, white pan bread lasts longer than regular bread because of the additives in it. They preserve the bread's texture for a week or so in your home, allowing you to enjoy your PB&Js for longer, while the traditional bread variety would likely go stale the next day. There's a state at which water can both be boiling and freezing. It's called a triple point, and it occurs when all 3 states of a substance, liquid, solid, and vapor, exist at all the same time without messing with each other. For water, the triple point happens just a tiny bit over the freezing temperature and at an atmospheric pressure of 0.006 atmospheres. The blue bird you see on the Twitter logo has an official name. It's Larry the Bird. And the creator of the social network named it after the former NBA basketball player Larry Bird from the Boston Celtics. If you've decided to save a few bucks by charging your smartphone less often, let me disappoint you. To charge a cell phone, you use teeny amounts of electricity. That's why the maximum amount of money you can save within a year is less than $1. Jeep is actually an abbreviation. Originally, it was called a GP, or a general purpose vehicle. It was only much later that it became a brand we know today. Bananas have a curved shape because they turn towards the sun. They're also not trees, but grass, by the way. The bunches grow downwards. But the fruit itself wants to get towards the sun, so it curves a bit up while it grows. Spandex, a fiber used for making sports clothing, got its name as an anagram of the word expands. If you were to watch every video on YouTube, you'd have to spend 1,000 years on that, and then about 1,000 times more because of all the new videos that would appear by then. You probably know that tomatoes are technically berries. Well, bananas, peppers, watermelons, and eggplants are too. There's a little open jar symbol on every cosmetics item packaging. It's called PAO, period after opening, and it tells you how long you can safely use the product after opening it. The jar is usually accompanied by a number with the letter M, which stands for months. Just make sure you remember exactly when you open the package so that you'll know when 3, 6, 9, or however many months indicated have passed. A phone jack often has several rings on it, each representing different components. One ring is for mono sound, 2 are for stereo, and the third one means your earphones have a microphone function built in. To know if an egg you boiled is fully cooked, just spin it on the countertop. If the egg spins steadily without immediately falling over, it's done. Instead of using good old water, firefighters extinguish fires with wet water. They add special wetting agents to it, chemicals that reduce the surface tension that regular water has. It helps the substance to soak into objects and spread everywhere much more easily. Your shower curtain sometimes gets a bit too clingy when you get into the shower trying to get clean. According to the shower curtain effect, the hot water lowers the air pressure behind the curtain. The higher, denser pressure outside the shower pushes the curtain in, making you feel like your shower curtain is out to get you. If you take a closer look at the regular garbage bag, you'll probably notice that the seam is inside out. In fact, you're not supposed to shake up the bag to open it. You gotta place the bag over a garbage can like a hat, and then just push the middle of the bag down into the can. This way, the seam will end up where it should be, inside. If you ever had problems with popping chocolates from the box, look at those little holes around them. They're there to help you. If you push a hole right next to the candy, it'll jump out easily. An extra hole at the upper part of the sink has multiple hidden functions. First, in case someone forgets to close the faucet, the water won't overflow and the bathroom won't get flooded. Second, thanks to that hole, the water drains faster, as it gives an escape for the air, helping the water flow down. Many cups and mugs have little grooves on the bottom on purpose. They're designed for washing machines. The grooves let the water flow and not spill all over your feet when you take the cup out. Also, those grooves let the air flow so the cup doesn't crack even if the tea is scalding. Take a closer look at that metal plate at the front of your stapler, known as the anvil. Turn the stapler upside down and rotate the anvil, reversing it. You're basically changing the stapler setting to temporary. In this mode, you can staple the sheets without too much vigor, so they can be easily detached from each other later. There's a tricky anti-rodent disc to make sure no rat is aboard. Rats usually get on a boat via mooring chains, so this disc fits onto them, and no rodent can go on a voyage. Jewelry is often sold in small pouches. They actually have a hidden purpose. They help prevent tarnish. Most retailers assure that the ring or whatsoever was sold is safe and secure. In most supermarkets, oranges usually come in mesh bags. Well, those bags don't really have any hidden purpose, but you can turn it into a great scrubbing tool. Just tie it up and see how it works next time you have an extra greasy frying pan. You don't need to scoop the jam out of a double yogurt container section. This type of plastic is quite flexible, so you just need to fold it in half and pour the jam directly into the yogurt section. The hidden function of a cup plunger is actually that it was meant to be used for sinks. Yeah, it works for toilets too, but you can keep an extra one to unclog the sink in case you need it. An extra hole at the upper part of the sink has multiple hidden functions. First, in case someone forgets to close the tap, the water won't overflow, and the bathroom won't get flooded. Second, thanks to that hole, the water drains faster, as it gives an escape for the air, helping the water flow down. Most metallic zippers have a hidden lock inside them to save them from awkward situations, such as an undone fly. Don't leave the zipper handle in an upward position. When you pull it downwards, it automatically locks. It's all thanks to those tiny grooves hidden underneath the handle. Bath foam isn't only for fun or a nice smell. It also helps regulate the temperature. The bubbles keep the water hot, so you can enjoy a bath a bit longer. Anyway, it works for acrylic bathtubs only. Those made of metal lose heat really fast either way. Escalator brushes aren't for keeping your shoes clean and polished. It might be tough to apply wax right on that brush while the escalator's moving. It's for our safety. Brushes won't let you come close to the edge, so a long coat or boot-cut jeans won't end up in between the steps. Originally, golf balls were smooth. They have a dimpled surface now because players noticed that overused balls with damages flew better than brand new ones. At some point, manufacturers started producing balls with dimples. If you take a box of aluminum foil, you'll see tabs you can press on the side. They keep the foil straight and prevent it from rolling. It's also easier to tear off some amount of foil thanks to those tabs. Jerry cans have 3 handles for a reason. It's a smart designer move, so when you carry it alone, you use only the central handle to distribute the weight evenly. But your friend wants to help you out. Each of you grabs the side handle. 2 flat prongs you can see on standard plugs used in North and Central America make sense. But how about those holes near the tips? Thanks to them, the outlet firmly grips the plug so that it won't loosen or fall out of the socket. It's sometimes irritating when you haven't used the entire stick of deodorant. There's a little bit more left, but it's hard to reach it. Okay, the trick is easy. Unscrew the bottom, take a pencil, and force it underneath that moving platform. That way, you'll push what's left of the deodorant out. There's a number put on the side of many cosmetic products. It isn't picked randomly. It tells you how long your product will last after you've opened it. This is why it has an open jar for a graphic symbol. A lint roller is good at removing those tiny fibers, but you can also use it to clean other stuff. For example, when you want to remove the dirt from the utensil tray in your dishwasher, simply take your sticky lint roller and put it into each compartment, and all the crumbs, dirt, and leftovers are all gone. Kings depicted on playing cards are real historical characters. Spades, King David. Clubs, Alexander the Great. Hearts, Charles the Great. Diamonds, Julius Caesar. Rings used to be more than a stylish accessory. The nobility used rings as a seal. Archers wore rings to protect their fingers from bowstring injuries, while needlewomen from needle pricks. Detachable headrests in cars are all about safety. If you pull it out of a seat, you'll see two pretty sturdy bars. If you ever get locked or trapped in a car, you can get out of there smashing the window with these bars. A little arrow next to the refueling indicator on the car's dashboard indicates which side of the vehicle has fuel tank openings. It's useful when you need to refuel a rented car. You are probably using shampoo wrong all the time. Well, the main thing you should know is that you don't apply it directly on your hair. You gotta apply it onto the roots only. The foam that you make is enough to clean your hair. A button on the reverse side of a shirt collar is needed to hold a tie in place. Anyway, this button was designed for slim ties that are not that popular today, so this button is only an element of design. A cotton pads pack has those strings on it to hang it on some hook or holder. There's no need to untighten and tighten the pack again. Look at the bottom, it has a perforated line. Tear along it and just pull out a cotton pad from a hanging pack. It's a myth that the red side of the eraser is for pencil and the blue one is for ink. The blue gets rid of mistakes on thicker types of paper only. It works both for pencil and even ink, but make sure the paper is really thick. But that blue little thing can do so much more. It can polish your jewelry, clean your electronics. For example, the screen of your cell phone. You know those irritating sticker residues that won't peel off? Eraser helps there too. Same as with cleaning scuffed up suede or dirt you have on your walls. There's no need to tear one of its edges on stick sachets. The right way is to tear them down the middle. You say it's not a big difference, but at least there's less mess with those torn paper bits. A small V patch at the bottom of the collar helps put on the sweater without losing any shape over time because it's made of a double layer of webbing material, just like waistbands and cuffs. To avoid spilling juice right onto your t-shirt, try pouring it from the other side of the carton. This way, it sloshes less and it's easier to control. To enjoy fresh and soft peanut butter, store it upside down. This way, the oils won't stay on the bottom all the time and distribute evenly in the jar. Yeah, you've heard before that a drawer beneath your oven is there for keeping the food warm if the guests are running late. Hey, you can also slow cook on lower temperatures in that drawer. Automatic lip liners and eye pencils sometimes have a sharpener installed in the package. The lid on the back part of the pencil doesn't only reveal the color. You can pull it out and sharpen up the product. Grocery cart loops help organize all the stuff in your cart better so you can enjoy your supermarket trip. You don't want to put your brand new fancy white jacket in a cart next to carrots and onions, huh? Fruit stickers know everything about your apple's past. A 5-digit number where the first number is 9 is a good sign. It's an organic product. A 4-digit number starting with a 3 or 4 means it was conventionally farmed. If the number starts with an 8 and there are 5 digits, it's best to leave it on the shelf. Metal buttons on jeans, also known as rivets, help make the pockets more durable when miners would fill them with heavy tools. They're still helpful today. Even if you don't store anything heavy in your pockets, rivets strengthen the seams and make your jeans last longer. All Tic Tac containers are designed to dispense one Tic Tac every time you open it. The lid has the same shape as the candy. Turn the container upside down, gently shake it, and slowly open it. You'll notice only one candy stuck between those lid grooves. So if you just open the container and shake it until 5 or even more candies fall into your mouth, it means you've been eating Tic Tacs wrong all this time.
You know, there are all sorts of amazing things you can do with products already lying around the house that were meant for other things. We'll explore some of those, plus everyday items that have other purposes you may not be aware of. I'm also in a silly mood, so hey, let's have some fun. Many pairs of kitchen scissors today have a serrated opening where the handles and blades meet. You can use this as an herb stripper to de-stem difficult herbs like thyme, rosemary, and chives. Saves you a lot of time trying to pick the leaves off by hand. And if you're short of a vase, you could present roses to your significant other this way. Just be careful when you're pointing the sharp end. The metal tab on soda cans can be flipped around. You can slip a straw in place so you don't have to hold it up to your mouth. This stay-on tab replaced the pull ring tab created in the early 60s. You remember those, don't you? Those could be quite sharp and easily discarded where they could be a menace for others. Now, you can pop your straw straight into one. Also means you can produce some bubbles and make a mess. Sometimes when you purchase an article of clothing, you receive a plastic baggie with an extra button and a swash of fabric. While the fabric is clearly used to patch holes, it can also be used to test the effects of various cleaners on certain surfaces. It's handy too to test wash cycles before using them to wash the whole garment. And if you want to clean your nose with it, that suggestion never came from me. You can use a screwdriver for leverage if you're having trouble lifting or moving something. Some also have a hexagonal shape handle that fits inside a wrench or spanner. You can use it to improve torque and, again, for leverage. A little easier on your hands. Some of us aren't that strong. Or maybe that's just me. Rubber bands are great for many things, but if you have a bottle that's hard to open, you can wrap the band around it for a better grip. Escalators have those fluffy black brushes for a similar reason that some have yellow lines on their steps, to try and deter people from getting too close to dangerous places. People don't always take notice, and sometimes clothing can drape close to a point where the step meets the edge or skirt. The brush is a little barrier to help prevent this from happening. They can also catch bits of fluff and prevent other small things from falling down into the gaps. Your average pair of jeans has several features that are both functional and somewhat sentimental. The metal rivets around the pockets help secure the stress points. This ensures they last a bit longer than average, though not all jeans have them. Many still have a tiny pocket directly above the main pocket. This was originally meant to hold a pocket watch. Even though pocket watches are mostly a thing of the past, many people still use this space to store coins, rings, or even a portable USB. Now, this may seem a little obvious, but if you've ever wondered what all the notches are in a car tire, it's for traction on the road. However, there are also a good indicator if your tire is getting too worn down. If those notches aren't so deep anymore and are almost flush with the road, it's time to replace them. If you don't, the next time you try to stop suddenly at a stop sign, you might be surprised to find your car has turned into a giant roller skate. Those takeaway containers most associated with Chinese restaurants are designed to not only carry your food home, but to store them in the fridge. They double as a plate, as you can eat straight out of them and don't have to worry about dirty dishes. Yay! They were actually patented way back in 1894 to transport freshly shucked oysters and were known as oyster pails. They were later adapted to use as leak-proof containers for food. While you're sitting on an airplane and looking out the window, you may have noticed those little holes, or in some instances, a small singular opening near the bottom. This is called a breather hole, and no, it's not for you. It's designed to equalize the difference in air pressure which builds up between the pressurized cabin and the atmosphere outside, especially during high altitudes. It also releases moisture from between the panes to avoid frost from forming on the windows and obstructing that all-important view. Sorry, but it looks like you won't be drawing a smiley face on it anytime soon. This was first introduced way back in 1956 by a company in Japan. Pretty cool, huh? They got their inspiration from snap-off rows on chocolate bars. Just don't get the two mixed up. One doesn't taste good. When it comes to measuring tape, almost every reel has an empty slot in the metallic end. This is called a nail grab, so you can attach it to a nail or screw. A handy trick to do measurements without requiring someone else to hold it in place. Ooh, very nifty. Bobby pins have grooves on one side to hold your hair in place better. Crazy notion, huh? The straight side goes face up, while the grooves go down against your head. They're called bobby pins because of the bobbed hairstyle, which was popular in the 1920s, though the pins were invented in the 19th century. The look is gone, but the pins remain. Please take them out before you wash your hair, as they don't look great stuck to your fingers. If you've been in a car or a bus and notice the textured black dots baked into the black edges. You've probably worked out that it's not there for its pretty looks. It's called frit, a ceramic paint. Its main purpose is to protect the window from ultraviolet rays. It also creates a rough surface for the adhesive to cling to. Now, if you see a pink lump of adhesive in the corner, please do not touch it. It's actually someone's old bubble gum. If you take a look at the bottom of the lock, chances are you'll see one or two little holes. This is to let water out from the inside that may have been trapped due to rain. This mini draining capability prevents the inner working from rusting over or freezing in place if the weather's very cold. If, in another situation, the lock becomes stuck, you can ease an oil-based product inside to lubricate the lock and get it working again. If you've lost the key and want to ease your frustrations, you can yell into the holes. It won't do anything to unlock it, but it may help you feel a little better. Some dress shirts have a fabric loop on the back. You guessed it, it's used for hanging the shirt up. The loops were reportedly first used in the Navy, as it was easy to simply hang them on the wall. During the 1960s in colleges, the fashion of the day was to wear the shirt buttoned all the way to the top, which made them difficult to hang. So designers began putting the loop on the back. If the student removed the loop, it signified that they were going steady in a relationship. Unless your friend ripped one off for a prank, now everyone's asking whom you're with. There's a little more to this story, but we haven't got time to hang around. And yes, that's a bad pun. On purpose. It's what I do. Ever wondered why coins have those little ridges along the edge? It's a leftover from earlier times when they were worth more. Counterfeiters could easily file the edges off to sell as gold or silver coins to make some profit. The ridges were created so it was much easier to tell which of the coins had been altered. It's not needed today, but the coins still have that altered style. If you ever get really bored, you could try counting how many ridges there are.
Okay, I know it's kind of cold to the touch, especially on a freezing winter's day. But did you know that brass doorknobs actually serve a purpose apart from looking classy and shiny? Since it's a copper alloy, brass has antimicrobial properties. That means it can help get rid of harmful germs and bacteria, sometimes in up to 2 hours. In high-traffic areas, that's all the more useful, but since brass is much costlier than other metals like nickel and steel, you barely see these types of doorknobs anymore nowadays. Speaking of lovely multi-purpose items, most screwdrivers have a tiny little secret of their own. They can sometimes be slid through a wrench so that they can be used to create more torque when twisting, not to mention the uses when it comes to bolts in hard-to-reach places. There's a reason why buttons on women's shirts are for the left-handed, and it has nothing to do with fashion. This practice dates back to the times when chambermaids were helping ladies dress themselves, and it was easier for them to perform their job with this orientation. Having the buttons placed as such indicated a sign of wealth, so it's easy to imagine why the practice carried on, even though most people dress themselves nowadays. Next time you receive a package in your mail, take a look at your box cutter. If it features some diagonal lines on the blade, you're in for a little design perk. Turns out that these are blades that snap off. Continuously cutting cardboard can dull the sharp edge of the blade. To help prevent the need to buy a brand new box cutter, the top segment along the next line can be broken off to reach a new sharp edge. To do this, check out the small hole at the base of the tool, sometimes called the blade snapper. The people that first came up with this brilliant invention were engineers inspired by the way chocolate bars are segmented. Hold on a minute, don't throw away the cardboard package just yet. Most likely, you'll have some silica gel packets somewhere at the bottom of the box. Since this gel is basically a drawing tool, it gathers up the moisture out of its environment, so you can store these packets for further occasions. Whether you'll need to dry out your phone or some other electrical object, you can place them in a container next to the silica gel to reduce the damage. You don't have to be a mechanic to know when a standard car tire needs replacing, since they come equipped with a neat indicator. Take a closer look, and you'll see that treads within the tire are a bunch of rubber notches. When the treads are evened out with the perpendicular bars, it's a sign you need to book an appointment with your local car service. Since most likely the tires have lost most of their traction, and may not be safe for driving any longer. The upper corners of a car windshield feature textured black dots melted into the glass edges. This neat add-on isn't there for design purposes. It's called frit glazing, which means that a special type of ceramic paint is added to the window for protecting its sealant from UV rays. It also conceals and creates a coarser surface for the adhesive used to set the window in place. Whenever you're up for a drive, check out if there's a small tab under your car's rearview mirror. Bet you didn't know it's there to help switch the mirror from daytime to nighttime views. It uses a prismatic glass technology to blur the reflection and reduce the glare of headlights behind you in traffic. People came up with these manually tilted mirrors in the 1930s, but they became standard somewhere in the 1970s. While you're in the car, check out the headrests, as you most likely don't know that they carry a little disguised purpose. Of course, they're adjustable to accommodate passengers of any height so that they get the proper support for their heads and necks. The hidden feature is that they are detachable and come with two very solid metal bars. Should you ever find yourself stuck in a car and need to make a fast getaway, these bars come in handy to crack out the car windows. So you're out for a drive and you're suddenly out of gas. What I'm about to describe sounds more like a meme than an actual situation bound to happen. But what if you're in such a hurry that you accidentally drive off with the gas nozzle still in the tank? Well, the nozzles have been designed to prevent any hazards from happening, rest assured. They feature a breakaway device that will allow the hose to separate when taken out with enough force. Initially designed in the early 20th century to be worn exclusively by basketball players, sneakers soon became one of those fashion fundamentals, similar to jeans and leather jackets. If you take a closer look at them, you'll see they have two extra holes on the side, similar to the shoelace holes. They're manufactured as such not only to provide extra ventilation, but to allow people to get extra creative with their laces when wearing the shoes. Admit it, you've always thought that chopsticks are merged at the end for the sole purpose of keeping them together until you're ready to dig into your meal. That may or may not be the whole truth. Under a more detailed inspection, the wooden tools feature a square-shaped end. Chopsticks manufactured like this date back to an old Japanese traditional design, which can help with breaking the ends easily. The separated end can then be used as a resting block for the chopsticks to keep it more sanitized in hopes it can be used again, since they won't be touching the table or any other surface. Women's bikes have a special design which, surprisingly, has a historical and fashionable purpose. The lower frame is for the most part meant to make up for the generally shorter height of ladies, compared to that of the average gentleman. While that is the case for handlebars and saddles, the overall frame is lower for an additional purpose. Way back when women wore long skirts and dresses all day, every day they needed to make sure their outfits wouldn't get caught in the frame. That's how we came up with a lower-framed bicycle, perfectly made for women and their needs at the time. The fact that toothpastes are multicolored is not just a nice perk to make dental hygiene more fun. There's a secret meaning related to each of the colors, which dates back to the 1970s. In those days, people grew more and more interested in their oral health care, and as such, they were looking for products which could do more than merely clean their teeth. One company was the pioneer in that regard, adding mouthwash to its toothpaste, meaning the blue strip. They later added on the red strip, meant to feature ingredients which helped with gum care. Speaking of toothpaste, check the cap next time you open a new tube. You may be in for a little surprise. There's a pointed cone shape inside the cap, so you can puncture the seal of the toothpaste without cutting yourself or ruining your manicure. Not to mention, it's more hygienic since you won't be able to transfer germs or other bacteria into the product itself. On the subject of bathroom countertop items, toothbrushes come with a neat add-on hidden in the bristle patterns. Apart from making the toothbrush look cooler, they also do come with a practical purpose. Most toothbrushes come with a pattern of blue bristles intertwined with white ones. The blue dye is meant to fade out, signaling the time when you need to replace your toothbrush. Dentists say that toothbrushes should be replaced every 3 to 4 months, but it does serve as a great reminder in case you forget. Still love playing with Lego? Don't judge. Hey, it's a great hobby for all ages. Notice there's a hole on top of the Lego heads? Behold, you're looking at a safety feature that the people at Lego designed to prevent choking hazards. The most dangerous issue should a person swallow any of these pieces is the blocking of the airways. Designing a hole inside the Lego head helps the air to flow freely through the piece until it can be removed safely. We're now used to all sorts of modern light bulbs, some tubular, some shaped like diamonds, and some even twisted altogether. Historically, light bulbs were round and the initial shape served a purpose in itself. It was mainly connected to the fact that glass bulbs were hand-blown, which gave them the round shape to begin with. The hidden practical reason was that the light bulb filament needed to be at the same distance from every surface of the glass sphere. The easiest way to achieve this was to make the glass in the shape of a globe. Go shopping for some oranges and I'm sure you'll get them in a red mesh bag. You'll rarely see them lying around without one of those. It's pure marketing. And that color isn't a random choice. When packed in a red mesh bag, oranges appear more orange, fresher, and more appealing to you. So you're more likely to buy them, right? Lemons are usually sold in green mesh bags for a similar reason. If you pack them in red, they'll appear more orange. Green goes better with yellow and makes those lemons stand out. You open a bag of chips and find it half empty, or half full if you're an optimist. Frustrating, I know, but I figured it's not because the manufacturer wants to get more cash out of you. The extra air helps to protect your chips from any damage. If the bags were filled to the brim, you'd get chip dust instead of chips after their transportation. A raspberry-flavored ice pop is typically blue, not pink or red, which both would be more obvious color choices. Well, imagine you're making a pack of popsicles. You can pick green for apple flavor, pineapple or lemon is yellow. There's strawberry, so it should be red. Cherry, well, red again. Watermelon? Red. And now raspberry. Yeah, red. But 4 reds are definitely way too many, and people won't tell the difference between them easily. So, at first, both strawberry and cherry flavors were red, but of different shades. The watermelon one was pink. They made the raspberry ones of a deep dark red dye. Then, scientists proved that that dye might be dangerous, so it was banned. Blue was another free color option, but there's no blue fruit or berry except for blueberry. And it's not a very popular flavor, so manufacturers started to paint raspberry blue. Sometimes they call it blue raspberry, but it's just a lab thing that doesn't naturally exist. If you buy a clock or see a picture of it, it'll most likely show 10:10 by default. The only reason behind it is that it just looks nice. You can see both hands, and they don't overlap. Also, it's symmetrical and nice, and it frames the 12. And finally, it makes a smiling shape that gives off a positive vibe. Mattresses usually have those decorative stitching patterns on them. Mattress manufacturers make a limited number of different mattresses, and the only way to make them look different is to come up with a fancy stitching pattern. 2 mattresses of different companies might be the exact same quality, but cost differently. Most people will never know it and will decide that different patterns mean something in terms of quality. So, when shopping, don't mind the pattern at all. Cheese has holes. In most types, they're small, but they can also be huge. Cheese is made by adding bacteria to milk, and the holes are the result of it. Those bacteria consume lactic acid and release little gas bubbles. They're trapped in the cheese, and then they pop, forming those little holes. The size of holes depends on the production temperature and its acidity. Swiss cheese has extra large holes. It's made at a temperature of around 120 degrees Fahrenheit and incubated at 70 degrees Fahrenheit for 5 to 7 days. So the cheese is very soft and the bubbles grow especially big. All coins have ridges, but have you ever wondered why? At first, all coins were linked to a silver standard. The amount of silver used in a coin was proportionate to the value of the coin. So, a $1 coin had way more actual silver in it than, say, a quarter. The edges were made reeded for security reasons. Once, it was a coin element that made a coin harder to reciprocate. It also prevented another kind of fraud. People would shave off a bit of metal from the edges of coins. It would be just a little so that no one would notice the difference. But if you did it to many coins, you'd get enough precious metals to sell. Reeded edges made it impossible. If someone tried to shave them off, the ridge would become smooth, and it'd be obvious to anyone that a coin had been tampered with. Nickels and pennies didn't have them because they were made of inexpensive metals, so there was no sense in protecting them. Now, no one makes coins out of silver, but the ridges are still there. When the governments started to produce new coins, they didn't see a point in changing the coin-making equipment, and they just kept the reeded edges. If you ever played billiards, you must know that green table well. The game originated around the 14th century, 5 centuries before basketball. Back then, folks didn't have pool tables, of course. Instead, they were playing it outside on the green lawn. Later, people moved the game indoors so they could play it even when it was raining. And they kept the nostalgic green to give it some lawn vibes. Medical workers usually wear a uniform that is a shade of blue or green. There's a reason for it. Before the 20th century, they were wearing their regular clothes, even when performing surgery. With the development of medicine, people started to pay more attention to matters of sterileness, so they started to wear a uniform, and at first, it was white to signify purity. The problem was that some stains were very hard to wash off from the white uniform. The color white would become greenish. So, it made sense to make the uniform green or blue. Besides, surgeons mostly focus on red colors during work. Blue and green are exactly the opposite side of the spectrum. So, if everything else is greenish-blue, the red becomes even more distinctive. Wash your hands with plain white soap, and you'll see some white foam. Wash them with a blue, red, yellow, green, whatever color, and the foam is still white. The reason for it is scattered light. Any light rays that falls on an object either get absorbed or are reflected back. Things that absorb all colors appear black. Those that reflect all colors are white. A red bar of soap is red because only the red color reflects back, and the other colors are absorbed. But once you produce some foam, it's made of many little bubbles. Each of them scatters light in different directions, so it looks white. Do you see something when you rub your eyes? These colors and shapes are called phosphenes. The reason why you see them is that when you're rubbing, you increase the pressure in the eyeball and activate the neurons of the retina that process visual information. Once they're activated, your brain interprets it as if you see the light, and it tries to actually see it. Ever wondered why you have black circles around your eyes when you're tired? The skin under the eyes is very thin, so the blood vessels are very close to the surface, and you can see any difference easily. When you lack sleep, your skin gets paler, and the blood vessels are even more visible. So, you can see those dark circles showing through the skin. Also, with age, your skin naturally gets thinner, so that's why older people tend to have dark circles. But if you're young, try to get more sleep, and they'll be gone. You say Germany, the Spanish say Alemania, and the Germans say Deutschland, and it sounds like 3 different countries, but it's just one. If someone's name is Olivia, she will be more or less of Olivia everywhere, so why do countries have different names in different languages? Countries have existed for a long time. Back when people from different countries couldn't communicate and spoke different languages, they'd refer to some territory the way they referred to it, never agreeing with other countries, and the name stuck. A German tribe called Alemanni once lived in what's now Switzerland. So I guess that's why the Spanish started to call the land Alemania. Then the Germans were united and called themselves Deutschland. In English, the pronoun I is always capitalized. Even the linguists don't know for sure why it's so. At least yet. I comes from the German ich. During the time it evolved from ish to ich and later to I. Some theorized that a little I appeared to be too insignificant in a sentence, standing on its own, so it started to be capitalized to be more distinctive. If you've ever seen a behind-the-scenes video, you might have noticed that they click that clapperboard before each scene. This clap helps a lot at the stage of editing. The film and the audio are recorded separately, and when they're synchronized, the clapperboard makes that brief clap at the very beginning of a shot scene. And it's easier to find where the scene starts to add the audio. Another reason is to give more details on the filmed piece. They add information about the scene and take number, the filming date, the camera angle, and other important stuff to the clapperboard that makes it easier to go through hundreds of video pieces later.
Well, I hate to break this to you, but money isn't actually made of paper, which also proves that money doesn't actually grow on trees. Most banknotes are 25% linen and 75% cotton, which is why they have such a distinct look and feel. Back in the 19th century, money was made of parchment paper. That's why people could very easily counterfeit it, unlike now. The Eiffel Tower is almost 6 inches taller during the summer. When you heat up some substance, its particles start to move more actively and take up a bigger volume. That's something they call thermal expansion. When the temperature lowers, the substance contracts again. Such an effect is more prominent in gases, but you can also track it in liquids and solids, including iron. Because of this, people build large structures like bridges using expansion joints. They allow a structure some leeway to expand and contract, and such changes don't cause any damage. Wow, I have some pants like that. Now, honey can last for thousands of years without going bad. Bees land on flowers to collect sugary nectar. Then they transport it back to their hive and transfer it to other worker bees. These bees reduce the water content of the nectar by repeatedly drinking and regurgitating the liquid. Bee barf. Special enzymes in their stomachs break down the glucose in the nectar, and it becomes more acidic. Bees deposit this nectar in the honeycomb and start fanning it with their wings so that the water evaporates more quickly. The honey is now highly acidic and low in water content, which keeps it safe from spoiling. The bacteria that can cause the rest of the food to go off can't survive in such conditions. Now, a long time ago, people didn't elevate their mattresses off the floor. This practice started in ancient Egypt and continued in many other cultures. People realized it was cold on the floor, and they could warm their beds easier if they were off the ground. Houses used to be more drafty. Cold air came in from under the doors. There was no central heating, so people had to find other ways to stay warm. Warm air tends to rise, and if you're positioned higher, you won't be as cold as on the floor. Also, this way, people could keep their beds clean more easily. In simple homes, floors used to be way dirtier than today, and all that dirt usually migrated into beds. Continuing now to talk dirty, do you think people are naturally clean and tidy? After all, our ancestors, who lived thousands of years ago, already used latrines and were tidying their hair with combs. And they kept their homes and themselves clean. Our natural need for hygiene and cleanliness is driven by our sense of disgust. That's the very mechanism that helps our bodies stay safe and protects them from different infections. That's why we're more sensitive to certain smells and things. But we still have some pretty sloppy habits. For example, eating snacks over a keyboard. Ew! I certainly never do that. But there are animals that are even neater than us humans. For example, rattlesnakes like to keep their surroundings tidy. Some of them even use their muscular necks and triangular heads to sweep aside messy grass when they hunt. Many animals like to clear their path when going after their future meal. Reptiles too. Less vegetation increases their chances of catching food. Songbirds also prefer to keep it neat and get rid of uneaten food, eggshells, and other trash in their nests. This way, they also make their homes less visible to their enemies. Meanwhile, out in space, shadows are darker on the moon than on our planet. That's because the atmosphere on Earth scatters more sunlight. But if you could visit the moon, you'd observe shadows so dark you wouldn't be able to see where you were going. Also, you'd notice fresh footprints on the lunar surface. People haven't set foot there in a few decades, but the footprints look as if they were left just yesterday. Since there's no water or wind on the moon, nothing can erase these footprints. So they stay there in their original form for millions of years. So be careful where you step, huh? Earth's core contains enough gold to coat the entire planet. And if you decided to do this, the level of this precious metal would be knee-high. For thousands of years, people have been mining gold and platinum together with a bunch of other precious metals, from underneath our planet's surface. That's why we have depleted some of the minerals in certain areas. But Earth still has a huge number of such deposits, especially if you get closer to its core. That's because of countless meteorites that collided with our planet during the period of its formation. Those meteorites contain different minerals, including gold. Back then, Earth was still in its molten state, which is why most of the gold, a heavy element, sank deep into its core. And the silicate mantle, positioned over the core, trapped really huge amounts of gold and some other minerals. Unfortunately, most of them are kind of out of reach now, since we talk about 1,800 miles below the surface and temperatures of thousands of degrees. Too hot, in other words. Sure, if you were about to go into space, one of the first things you'd think of would be your spacesuit. But do you know that it's possible to survive in space even if you aren't wearing any protection? Well, don't get your hopes up yet. You'd last for no more than 15 seconds. That's how long it would take you to lose consciousness, because oxygen will stop coming to your brain. In 1965, one technician accidentally depressurized his suit inside a vacuum chamber. He lost consciousness after 12 to 15 seconds. 27 seconds later, his suit luckily got repressurized. The man later said that he remembered the moisture on his tongue started to boil. He also lost his sense of taste, and it didn't come back until 4 days after the accident. Now, you can't hold your breath in space either, so that won't save you. Your lungs will rupture at one point because the air inside will expand. The oxygen in other parts of your body will start to expand too, which means you will balloon up to twice your regular size, almost like Dudley Dursley's Aunt Marge from Harry Potter. Well, not quite. You won't explode, only thanks to your elastic skin. It will keep holding you together, and the liquids in your body will start vaporizing pretty quickly too. Doesn't that sound pleasant? No! The ocean has its iconic blue color thanks to sunlight. When the sun shines, the water absorbs longer orange and red wavelengths of light and reflects shorter blue light waves. This is only possible when there's a huge amount of water. So, the more water you have in one place, the bluer it becomes. That's why the water you pour in your glass has nothing in common with this beautiful ocean blue color. The ocean performs many important functions. For one thing, it produces 50 to 80% of all the oxygen on our planet, which means it keeps us alive. But it also helps the internet to function. So, when you're laughing at a funny dog video or binge-watching your favorite series, thank the ocean for that. The majority of the cables that power the internet, and therefore allow people from all over the world to use it, run underwater. Those are submarine communications cables, miles and miles of wiring crisscrossing the ocean floor. There are special boats for putting all that in place. They're designed specifically for that purpose. To make sure nothing damages the cables and your internet, people need to put them on relatively flat stretches of the ocean floor. The cables also need to be away from old shipwrecks or large ocean ecosystems. Some of these cables have a special coating that protects them from damage. This way, no hungry sharks or curious fish have a chance to munch on the wiring. Now, trees talk. Well, not exactly like people do, but they have their own way of communication. Their roots are connected through an underground network of fungi. That network got its name of the Wood Wide Web. Thanks to this network, trees can share resources with one another. That's how they talk. They use these fungi to transmit nutrients and water from one tree to another. For example, there's a mother tree or another tree that's stronger and older than others in the forest. So it shares some of its nutrients and sugars with small trees growing nearby. Thanks, Mom! Now look at all these insects flying around on a nice sunny day. Do you think they get sunburned? Well, those that spend most of their time in the open don't. They have dark exoskeletons that contain melanin. That's how they block UV rays. But insects that live underground and in the water, or nocturnal creatures, have paler and thinner skin. If they spend too much time outside during the day, they can indeed get sunburned, or even worse, they could get eaten. Apples you usually grab in the supermarket seem super fresh, but they can be up to a year old. It's all about how they're stored. First, they're covered with wax. Next, the wax is dried with hot air. And finally, the apples go into cold storage. Sloths are better at breath holding than dolphins. Those lazy buddies can slow their heart rate and hold their breath this way for up to 40 minutes. If they watched any breathtaking series, they'd literally breathe once per episode. If you look at any old photograph, you'll see that people didn't have those big smiles we love to have in the photos today. First, photographers preferred to keep things serious, so instead of cheese, people would say prunes to keep their lips tight, and other things. Earth is not the only planet with water. Scientists from NASA strongly believe one of Jupiter's moons, Europa, has an ocean with twice as much water as we have on our planet. It's hidden under a thick layer of ice. Even Mars has some liquid water flowing. Cicadas are some of the biggest flying insects you can find out there. Most species are not that impressive, only about 1 to 2 inches long. Only. But the largest one, known as the empress cicada, has a body length of about 3 inches. In comparison, its wingspan reaches a whopping 8 inches. That's a really big bug. Not all goats peacefully munch on meadow grass. Some of them prefer climbing trees for food. Meet Moroccan goats, a natural phenomenon unique to North Africa. The thing is, they're way more attracted to argan tree fruits than to regular grass. That's quite understandable. Those fruits look just like golden apples. These goats are quite agile, so they easily climb up the trees to get the juicy treats. And they rarely need help from their nanny. There's a creature that can technically live forever. You see, there's a species of jellyfish known as superpowers, or however you pronounce their name on the screen. Well, those guys have a superpower of respawning. So whenever they get any sort of physical damage or something, those jellyfish reset themselves back to the polyp stage and start all over again. Now, let's test you. Are there more trees on Earth or stars in the Milky Way? If your answer is stars, sorry, you're wrong. According to scientists' estimations, there are up to 100 billion stars in our galaxy and about 3 trillion trees on Earth. Now, that's impressive. Pluto still hasn't made a complete orbit since it was discovered. And now imagine that it was found back in 1930. It takes about 248 years for Pluto to make a full orbit around the Sun. By the way, Mercury is the fastest. It takes only about 88 days for this planet to make a full trip. However, Pluto will complete its first full orbit since its discovery in 2178. I can't wait. One more fun fact about planets: the dwarf planet Haumea has a very peculiar shape. It looks exactly like a potato. It's about the same size as Pluto and has rings similar to those Saturn has. If you ever want to find it, it's located beyond the orbit of Neptune. Nachos aren't some ancient Mexican food. They were invented less than 100 years ago. Ignacio Aña, nicknamed Nacho, is said to have created this dish in the 1940s. There's a nice story behind nachos. A regular customer got really hungry and asked if Ignacio could bring her and her 3 friends something different that day. He saw how hungry the ladies were and decided to cook something quick for them. He had to improvise using available ingredients, so he put some tortillas, grated loads of cheese on top of them, and heated the dish from above. To make the dish more savory, he added some jalapeno peppers on top. Mamie Finan, that very regular customer, asked what the name of the unusual snack was. Ignacio didn't think long and said the name was Nacho Special. Oranges aren't necessarily orange. If grown in subtropical regions, the climate isn't cold enough to break down the chlorophyll, so the fruit peel stays yellow or greenish. Such oranges usually get treated with ethylene gas that can help turn the oranges orange. Orange you impressed with that? Okay, it's time for a little riddle for you. What's common between peanut butter and an engagement ring? Both of them contain diamonds. Scientists have learned how to turn peanut butter into diamonds. They extracted the oxygen from CO2. They got the carbon and then put it under intense pressure, and in the end, they got diamonds. In a jiff, I suppose. Pufferfish, also known as blowfish, are famous for 2 things. It's clumsy and it can literally turn into a sort of a balloon. Blowing themselves up helps them survive in the wild. They are inedible when swollen. Well, they're not entirely inedible even when they're deflated. Their poison is over 1,000 times more toxic than cyanide. Don't count on antidotes, they just don't exist. Or probably we need more time to find one. Not only can people become knights, but penguins can do that too. There's one living in Edinburgh, and it was granted knighthood back in 2008. Meet Nils Olaf III, the mascot and colonel-in-chief of the Norwegian King's Guard. So, what size of shoes do you wear? I bet it's way smaller than the size the Statue of Liberty wears. No statue needs shoes, but if the Statue of Liberty wanted to grab a pair of new sneakers, she'd need to look for size 879. No surprise here, she is 151 feet tall. These are our muscles that can cause goosebumps. These tiny fan-shaped muscles are called erector pillae, and we have them at the base of every hair follicle. Whenever it's cold, they get contracted, which makes our hairs literally stand up, creating goosebumps. You may think you're not an athlete, but if you've ironed your clothes in very uncomfortable locations at least once, you already are. Well, sort of. Extreme ironing is an extreme sport where people take ironing boards to very unexpected places, such as forests, canoes, or mountains, and iron the clothes there. Some do that even on the top of bronze statues or underwater. And yeah, there are even official championships. Haven't these people heard of permanent press? Rap battles aren't something that appeared recently. In medieval England, there was something called flyting, which was very much like contemporary rap battles. It was quite popular in the 15th and 16th centuries, when two opponents mocked each other in an improvised battle. Tongue Map says we have different parts for different tastes. Well, not really. There are individual taste buds that sense certain flavors more than they do with some others, but it doesn't mean one area can taste sweet better than the other. Studies show that all mouth areas have taste buds sensitive to all tastes. Chameleons don't change colors because they want to match their surroundings. That would probably be a very tiring thing to do. In reality, some other things like mood, temperature, or the amount of light they get affect their color. When chameleons relax and stretch cells, crystals that are inside of them are affected by the light. These reptiles use crystals to communicate with each other. So, for example, darker shades show that they're not in such a good mood. It's more like they feel kind of grumpy. Ah, beware the grumpy chameleon. Turkeys can blush just like people do. It works the same way. They blush when angry, excited, or even feel bad. You can see the skin on their necks and heads turn red. Opossums don't really sleep while hanging by their tails. You see that in cartoons and some photos, but in general, they don't. Their tails are strong, so these animals can grip branches and hold their weight, but only for shorter periods. Adults are really too heavy to stay in this position for too long, so they wouldn't get too much rest. So I could say, hanging by their tail overnight is sort of impossible. From our Fruit That Bites Back department, bromelain is a powerful protein-digesting enzyme made to break down protein cells. It's mostly concentrated in the core of the pineapple or close to it. This stuff is even used as a meat tenderizer these days. But once you've swallowed that mouthful of pineapple, your stomach's acid will break down the bromelain fast. If the burning sensation is too much for you, then there's a way to get rid of it. Cooking alters the enzymes in any food, so sticking your pineapple on the grill will stop it from hurting you altogether. The tissue in our mouth heals faster than any other part of our body, thanks to the increased blood flow to our face as well. In other news, donkey milk makes the world's rarest and most expensive cheese. To create Pyule cheese, the donkeys have to be hand-milked 3 times a day. It takes over 6 gallons of milk to produce just 2 pounds of crumbly white cheese. It costs about $600 a pound. This cheese is remarkably high in protein, calcium, and omega-3, and it's an excellent alternative for people with cow's milk intolerance. But $600 a pound? The admittance rate for Harvard is 4.7% of applicants out of 100. Walmart is a bit harder, and only 2.6%. When things get hot, they move quickly, while the opposite applies to cold. If any atoms stop vibrating, they're at absolute zero. A freezing cold 459.67 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 Kelvin. It's almost impossible to get to this temperature though. Not even space is that cold. It holds an average temperature of 2.7 Kelvin or about minus 455 degrees Fahrenheit. A group of flamingos is called a flamboyance, or a regiment, or even a colony. A flamboyance matches those birds the best, huh? Hey, I like pink. Creating giant flocks of thousands, they fly to water bodies all over the world. They have to stick to different food in different places, so their colors change quite a bit, depending on whether they eat algae, shrimps, or insects. Humans and emperor penguins are the only warm-blooded animals to stay in Antarctica during winter. We can wear coats though. The penguins are stuck in formal wear. Emperor penguins form large huddles. To share body warmth and provide protection, they form a huddle that's constantly moving. This way, any of them can get a turn in the middle. Clouds look white because they're reflecting sunlight off the water droplets. When they're thin, a large portion of the light passes through, making the cloud appear white. As the amount of water increases, so does the thickness. We see this as gray. The coque de mer, or sea coconut, produces the world's largest and heaviest seeds. A single seed can be 12 inches long, 3 feet around, and weigh over 40 pounds. Rabbits may be cute and cuddly, but in Brisbane, Australia, it's illegal to keep one as a pet. You can keep them only for approved purposes, such as public entertainment, like a magician. The Kármán line is the general international consensus for the start of space. It's at 62 miles, or 328,000 feet above sea level. The human brain is made up of 60% fat. This makes it the fattiest organ in the human body. Gray matter makes up about 40% of the brain's weight and contains 100 billion signal-transmitting neurons. Moving on, in Utah's Fish Lake National Forest lies the pando. It's better known as the trembling giant. Over 47,000 quaking aspen trees share the same root system. They've been there for so long that they are estimated to be close to 1 million years old. A margarita pizza has tomato, mozzarella, and basil on top to represent the colors of the Italian national flag. A delicious random fact. Ever sneezed because of a cat? Pets can be allergic to humans too, because cells shedding from our skin and hair, though it's rare. Also, it might be because of the smells we cover ourselves in every day, like deodorants and perfumes. The world's largest sandcastle, measuring 57 feet 11 inches high, was created in Germany on June 5, 2019 by Sculptura Projects. It took 3.5 weeks and a staff of 20 to make the sandcastle out of 11,000 tons of sand and water. Antarctica's largest native land animal is a wingless midgefly called Belchica antarctica, at only half an inch long. Now wait. Every other animal in Antarctica is considered a marine animal. Seals and penguins spend most of their time in the ocean looking for food. Antarctica is also the only place on Earth where there are no native ants. General Sherman is the world's largest tree. Located in California, the giant sequoia is over 2,000 years old and is taller than the Statue of Liberty. There's a city called Boring in Oregon that has sister cities called Dull in Scotland and Bland in New South Wales, Australia. Polar bear fur isn't white at all. It's transparent and hollow, and their skin is black. Their coat camouflages so well that it can sometimes pass as a snowdrift or snow dune in Arctic environments. A thick layer of body fat keeps them warm while swimming, and a double-layered coat keeps them warm from the cold air. Now, it's always drawn and shown this way, but our sun isn't yellow, orange, or even red. It's a mixture of all the colors together. If we could look at it, it would appear white. The core of our sun reaches an estimated 27 million degrees Fahrenheit. But we've made it hotter on Earth. Researchers at Sandia National Laboratories produced in their lab scorching hot 3.6 billion degrees Fahrenheit with some superheated gas. Back in 1930, there was a day without news. On April 18th, the BBC radio station in London reported there was no news at the 8:45 p.m. time slot. For the rest of the 15-minute segment, they played some relaxing piano music. I think we should bring that back sometimes, don't you? Humans seem to be the only animals who really get a kick out of eating spicy food. Sure, there are benefits from eating the chilies themselves, like antioxidants, faster metabolism, and vitamin C. But we can get all that from other vegetables. There doesn't seem to be any real reason to put ourselves through those hot peppers. Get equipped for any season with brand new Brightside merch. Click the link and grab your print. The majority of bananas consumed around the world are from the Cavendish hybrid. They've got no seeds and are able to reproduce with the aid of farmers. The farmers remove and transplant part of the stem, helping to keep our favorite yellow fruit going. This makes nearly every single one of these bananas genetically identical. Hot water will freeze quicker than cold water. It's called the Mpemba effect. If you put an open container with hot water into a freezer, the water will keep evaporating from steam. Less water means less to freeze. When you eat carrots, your skin could turn orange. Carrots are packed with beta-carotene, a natural orange pigment. Too much of this pigment can change how you look a bit, especially in body areas with thicker skin, like your palms, soles, knees, and elbows. The ocean is blue because water absorbs the majority of red colors in the light spectrum, so there are only all the shades of blue left for us to see. Still, under certain conditions, it can change colors completely. It might turn green, brown, red, pink, and orange as light bounces off the particles in the water or sunrises and sunsets. The majority of the ocean is entirely dark. Hardly any light can penetrate the depths of the oceans. Now, if a zombie invasion ever happens, don't worry. There's a special center in the US with a real website with checklists of necessary items, blogs, a graphic novel to show you how serious it is, and even a poster to show you're ready. And if the zombie turns up with a pineapple, then you're in real trouble. The largest desert in the world isn't the Sahara. It's covered with snow. The Antarctic Polar Desert covers the continent of Antarctica and is the size of about 5.5 million square miles. That's 1.5 times the size of the United States. A desert isn't measured by temperature or sand. It's defined as a place that receives less than 10 inches of rainfall each year. A giraffe's neck is about 6 feet long, while a human's neck is just 4 inches on average. But we share one thing in common. We both have only 7 bones in our necks. The major difference is their bones are about 10 inches long. In 2015, the University of South Australia created a bike that stretched for over 155 feet. The bike had to be wider than average to stop it from tipping over because of the length. But a brave group of cyclists did manage to ride the bike nearly 330 feet. It's not an oversized tongue that sticks out of a clamshell. That's their foot they're using to move around. It's also quite strong, giving them the ability to dig deep down into the sand and mud for protection. There's a fruit in Central and South America named black sapote. It tastes and looks like chocolate pudding. Ooh, let's try that. The longest game of cricket lasted over 12 days between England and South Africa in 1939. It ended without a winner because the English team had to catch their boat home. The first trailer in a movie theater was shown in 1912, but for a Broadway show, not a movie. The trailers were originally played after the movie because they trailed it. Eventually, they started appearing at the beginning, as viewers would instantly leave the theater once the movie had finished. Hey, it's over. Bye-bye.
It's breakfast, and you crack open a hard-boiled egg. You find that it's green. Looks disgusting. Well, it looks like you cooked it for too long. This happened because of the thin sulfur layer in the whites and iron in the yolk. Though the mixture of these chemicals is black, it's such a thin layer mixed into the yellow yolk that it turns green. But don't fear, these strange green eggs, they're completely safe to eat. While sitting for a photo, it would be weird to say anything other than cheese to get that perfect smile. But in the 19th century, it was different. Photographers would ask their subjects to say prune instead. The reason was to obtain that thin, duck-like expression. It was considered a prim and proper way to present a photograph. Strawberries aren't even considered a berry and are more of a false fruit, further identified as multiple fruit. What we believe is that the tiny little brown or white things are seeds, but they're actually individual fruits attached to its flesh. But how did this mistake start in the first place? Well, the confusion began hundreds of years ago when it was first named. However, this was a long time before botanists were even around to help clarify this mistake. Sci-fi films are often inspired by real-life space exploration, but there's one thing that NASA implemented after watching a sci-fi movie. A 1929 flick, Woman in the Moon, introduced a countdown that built up anticipation. NASA found this helpful and started using it in 1969. Not only is it an exciting moment, but it does also have a practical use. It helps the massive team behind each launch ensure they're synchronized perfectly down to the last second. This one might change your appetite the next time you see a juicy apple. Usually picked around August to November, the shiny supermarket apples are covered in hot wax, then hot air dried and sent into cold storage. Before they arrive at the supermarket looking fresh, they've been in storage for anywhere between 6 to 12 months. I bet you can't do this. Try and hum while closing your nose. No noise came out, right? Without an exit for air, it's physically impossible to make any noise. The world's largest national park in Greenland covers a staggering 375,000 square miles. That's twice the size of California. But although it's huge, there are only up to 40 permanent residents in this massive area, making it one of the most isolated places on Earth. Issues with bad breath? Gum is the typical choice, but other things are just as effective. Cucumber is a great natural solution and a more efficient one. Working similarly to gum, it helps stimulate saliva production, but what makes it different from other odor defeaters is its water content. Washing away any unwanted pieces of food still remaining also helps to avoid a dry mouth, which causes odors. You would think that Z would be the last letter put into the alphabet, but it was actually J. Long ago in 1524, an Italian grammarian wanted to identify a way to separate I and J. Together, they were a vowel, and J was then used as a consonant that sounded like Y. It wasn't until 1633 when an English grammar book explained the proper use of J, and it was entered into the alphabet in the way we use it today. The first vacuum cleaner was invented in 1901, the size of a Winnebago, and it took 4 people to operate it. A petrol engine used to supply power also required a horse to move it around. I would suppose that it was mainly used for cleaning up after the horse in the end. It wasn't long after that they found easier ways to clean the house, and in 1910 the first handheld vacuum was invented. If you've been told that you sweat like a pig, there is no need to be offended. It's actually more of a compliment, as pigs don't sweat. All swine are born without sweat glands, and the only way to cool off is to find a nice puddle, or more famously, some mud. Umbrellas were invented around 4,000 years ago and were only socially acceptable for women to use them. Their original purpose was to keep the sun out of your eyes and as a fashion accessory. It wasn't until the mid-18th century that men were allowed to use them. In the modern, water-resistant version we use today was made. And most importantly, the very first dog umbrella was invented in 1965. Dentists can be very strict on what sweets you eat, so you would be amazed to learn that cotton candy was invented by a dentist. John C. Wharton, a dentist and confectioner, wanted to give his clients a treat every visit. Maybe he gave them this treat to ensure they came back more often. If we could theoretically build a highway to outer space and could adjust the effects of gravity, it would only take you an hour to drive to space if you drove at 60 miles per hour. Let's make this happen, Elon Musk. How heavy could a cloud be? It looks like it couldn't weigh too much as it floats easily up in the sky. But a cloud could weigh anywhere up to 1 million pounds. That massive cloud is able to float above you because the air's lighter up there and less dense than dry air below. You can see the same effect when observing oil floating on water. You think you yawn because you were bored or tired? Well, it's a myth. You yawn more often later in the day, but it's just your body helping you remain alert. Through inhaling cool air and stretching the muscles, it cools the flow to the brain. Researchers identified brain sizes in different species of animals based on their yawns. The larger the brain, the longer the yawn. So how long do you yawn? Playing video games regularly increases gray matter in the brain for all you gamers out there, which helps to boost brain connectivity through muscle control, memories, perception, and spatial navigation. An experiment at a New York medical center found that surgeons who played 3 hours of video games made 37% fewer mistakes and performed 27% faster than other non-gaming doctors. Have you ever wanted to be just a little bit taller? Well, get your space boots on. The human body can grow up to 3% taller when in space. While living on Earth, our spines are compressed by gravity. But in zero gravity, the decompression lets the spinal discs expand, allowing the spine to lengthen. Cows don't have full REM sleep while standing, but they can have a light nap. This is an evolutionary trait that helped their ancestors avoid predators. They stand idle during a power nap if they need to make a quick getaway. They do have full REM sleep, only by lying down. They only need 4 hours of sleep to fully energize for the next day. Women have more taste buds than men, and 35% of women are considered super tasters, and only 15% of men are. Not surprisingly, more women prefer pineapple on their pizza. Now, don't be triggered if you disagree. While sleeping, you're incapable of sneezing. This might seem impossible, especially when you have a cold. But while your body is resting, the nerves that help you sneeze are as well. While you sleep, the brain ignores any irritating sensations or tickling that would typically create the sneeze. Our calendar year once used to end in February. This is because it was the last month to be added to the calendar. A calendar year once only lasted 304 days, so there was plenty of room for more months. It was changed in the year 46 BCE to the calendar we know today by Julius Caesar. They previously followed the lunar calendar. Julius Caesar saw issues with this as it didn't match the seasons. He hired an astronomer who created a calendar based on the solar year.
At a distance of 640 light-years from the Sun, scientists discovered planet WASP 76b, where it rains iron. The planet is very close to its Sun and always turn to it in the same side. The term is tidally locked. The temperature on the sunny side is so high that metals melt and evaporate there. The other half of the planet is cool enough so that metals condense again and fall down as rain. Speaking of tidal locks, our moon is the same way. There's no dark side to our satellite, it's just always turned to us with one side. When the moon happens to be in between the Earth and the Sun, what we call its dark side becomes brightly lit. We just can't see it from our planet. Figures. A recent study claims that the moon has a tail, and every month it wraps around our planet like a scarf. A slender tail made up of millions of atoms of sodium follows Earth's natural satellite, and our planet regularly travels directly through it. Meteor strikes blast these sodium atoms out of the moon's surface and further into space. You won't believe it, but the moon seems to be shrinking. Earth's natural satellite is now 150 feet smaller than it used to be hundreds of millions of years ago. The reason for this phenomenon might be the cooling of the moon's insides. It could also explain the quakes shaking the surface of our planet's natural satellite. Astronomers have recently found out that Mars is seismically active. Mars quakes occur there on a regular basis. For several days every month, the moon remains between the Sun and our planet. That's when Earth's gravity picks up that sodium tail. Our planet drags it into a long stripe that wraps around its atmosphere. This lunar tail is totally harmless. It's also invisible to the human eye, 50 times dimmer than what you can perceive. But on those rare days, high-powered telescopes can spot its faint yellowish glow in the sky. The tail looks like a gleaming spot that's 5 times the moon's full diameter. Turns out there are plenty of planets in the universe, and even in the Milky Way galaxy, that have liquid or frozen water on them. The closest one is within our solar system. It's Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Scientists are almost sure that underneath its frozen surface there's an actual ocean of water. But it's too soon to be hyped about possible life on such planets. Liquid water is only one of many things that have to come together for life to appear on a planet. A star in the galaxy GSN 069 is likely to turn into a planet the size of Jupiter in the next trillion years. It might happen because of the star's regular encounters with a black hole. First, astronomers noticed unusual X-ray bursts that were strangely bright. They went off every 9 hours. After studying this phenomenon for some time, the scientists realized it was a star moving in a unique orbit around a black hole. The dazzling flashes? It was the material getting slurped off the star's surface by the black hole. It turned out that over millions of years, the black hole had already transformed the red giant into a white dwarf, and the process isn't going to stop whatsoever. Astronomers have found some traces of phosphine in the atmosphere of Venus. On our planet, this gas, colorless and flammable, is often found where microbes live. No wonder a new theory suggests that there might be life on Venus. But even if there was some life on the evening star, it could have only appeared in its atmosphere. Probably no living organism would be able to survive the planet's extreme environment. Venus's surface is extremely dry. There's no liquid water on the planet, and the pressure there is 90 times greater than that on Earth's surface. The temperatures often rise higher than 900 degrees. That's hot enough to melt some metals. As for vacations there, I'll pass. In fact, there's a place millions of light years away where there's a whole floating space cloud made entirely of water. There's so much of it that we could fill all our oceans 140 trillion times over. Slightly more than what we need. Water on Earth is actually a puzzle shrouded in mystery and covered with riddles. The most popular theory is that it was brought to our planet by icy comets and asteroids that left behind not only mighty craters, but the liquid substance thanks to which we can now thrive. But in space, there's a whole lot of organic matter, and under specific conditions, it could yield so much water it would be enough to fill our oceans thousands of times over. Researchers conducted an experiment in which they heated this organic matter and obtained clear water and oil. If this is confirmed in future studies, it could mean that even oil appeared on Earth not only thanks to fossilized remains of living beings, but came from outer space as well. And yet, there might just be about 6 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way galaxy alone. The latest data has shown that every fifth Sun-like star can have at least one planet in its habitable zone. And not just any planet, mind you. It has a rocky core and surface, and it's of comparable size to the Earth. Being inside the habitable zone of its star, such a planet would have high chances of becoming home to living creatures, microbes at least. And if there are billions of these planets in our galaxy, you could safely say that at least one of them is not only habitable, but inhabited already. And now, multiply this by the number of galaxies in the universe, also considering that many of them are much bigger than the Milky Way. This gives us billions upon billions of Sun-like stars and Earth-like planets, and some of them are surely more like ours than others. And get this, we might be able to walk upright because of supernova explosions. About 2.5 million years ago, a supernova sent cosmic rays to our planet. They triggered a series of electrical storms in the Earth's atmosphere, which turned into thunderstorms. Those in turn caused wildfires in Northeast Africa, where our earlier ancestors lived. Fires turned the forest area into a savanna, the atmospheric pressure changed, and our ancestors had to stand on two legs to survive. The biggest explosion since the Big Bang was registered in 2019. This happened in the Ophiuchus cluster, which unites thousands of galaxies. According to scientists, the blast was equal to 20 billion, that's 18 zeros, megaton explosions happening once a millisecond for 240 million years. I'll have to trust that. My math is not that good. In 2019, NASA's InSight lander, whose goal was to study the interior of Mars, registered the first Marsquake ever. These quakes were coming fast, about 2 per day. Most of them were tiny. You wouldn't even feel them if they happened on our planet. So far, more than 300 Marsquakes have been detected. Those are the first quakes on any space body other than Earth and the Moon. Another mysterious phenomenon discovered by the mission was bizarre magnetic pulses. They occurred every midnight around the lander. It's still unclear what those pulses were. Maybe after midnight they're going to let it all hang out, or something. Pluto's atmosphere rises much higher above the surface of the dwarf planet than, let's say, Earth's. It also has more than 20 layers, all of them freezing cold and extremely condensed. Remember the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs on Earth? Hey, I wasn't around then, but who could forget? There might have been another space show that ended badly for at least 75% of all life on our planet in the past. Roughly 360 million years ago, A supernova explosion occurred about 65 light-years away from us, and the cosmic rays sent by it swept away the ozone layer of our pretty blue ball. Wow, tough neighborhood. Now, there are things about nature that you know for sure, or don't you? Let's check how much you know about the incredible world we live in. How many of the 14 points will you guess? Let us know. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built when mammoths still roamed the earth. Myth or fact? It's actually a fact. The most famous pyramid in the world had been constructed about 500 years before woolly mammoths went extinct, approximately 4,000 years ago. Their last known habitat was the cold and deserted Wrangel Island in the Arctic Sea, which might not have been as cold then as it is today. There are more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way. Is it myth or fact? It's a fact. Scientists used to believe there were about 4 billion trees on our planet, but more recent studies have shown that there are over 3 trillion of them, making it 420 trees per person. As for the stars in our galaxy, there are only about 100 billion, which is 30 times fewer than the trees on Earth alone. The trees you see are all individual ones. Myth or fact? This is false. In fact, 90% of the trees on Earth are interconnected by mycelium filaments. They send warning signals when in danger and exchange nutrients through them. It's kind of like the underground internet. Also, there are organisms like Pando, for example, which is the largest single living being on the planet. It looks like a dense forest of quaking aspens. In fact, it's basically a single giant tree, with its roots being interconnected underground. We drink the same water dinosaurs used to drink hundreds of millions of years ago. Myth or fact? Actually, it is. Only a small portion of the water on our planet has evaporated for good. The rest of it is constantly renewed. So, mammoths, dinosaurs, and whatever came before them billions of years ago drank and swam in the same water we see today. Not to mention what else they did in the water. Unfortunately, the water doesn't keep information about those ancient creatures for us to find out more about them. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. Are you willing to bet on that? Myth or fact? If you aren't, good for you. Lightning may strike the very same spot as many times as it wants. It might seem random, but the electrical discharge from the sky is pulled toward the tallest objects in the thunderstorm area. Also, the material this object is made of matters too. It's by no chance that lightning rods on buildings are mostly made of copper and aluminum alloys. These metals are some of the most conductive materials, so they pull lightning very efficiently. All deserts are hot. Now, this one's easy, right? Myth or fact? If you guessed it's a myth, then right you are. Deserts are qualified not for their temperature, but for the presence or absence of growth and life in them. The most well-known desert is the Sahara, of course, and it is indeed very hot. The actual largest desert in the world is Antarctica, which is almost twice the size of the Sahara Desert. And you wouldn't call it even lukewarm. It's a polar desert, and there are several others on our planet. For example, Greenland. There's enough gold underground to cover the entire planet in a thick layer. Would you believe that? Well, you should, because it's true. Since 1950, humanity has mined nearly 200,000 tons of gold. If we made a cube out of all this metal, it would be 70 feet high and wide. Recent data from scientists confirm that there are huge reserves of gold in the Earth's core. The metal is enough to cover the whole planet, and people might have gold up to their knees. The problem is, we just can't mine it from there. Hey, I don't mine if you don't. The Moon and Mars are better mapped than the Earth's oceans. Now, this can't be true, can it? Actually, it can. We have a detailed map of the Moon and Mars, although we're still discovering surprises on their surfaces, granted. Still, over 80% of the Earth's oceans are unmapped and unexplored. We can't study the oceans properly because of pressure, cold, and lack of light underneath billions of tons of water. The lava is always red. What other color can it be, right? Myth or fact? Myth. Usually lava is really red or orange because it's basically molten rock from the deep bowels of our planet. But there's one volcano in Indonesia whose lava is blue and luminescent. Only at night though. During the day, it looks normal. No mystery about it, just tons of sulfuric gas. This volcano also has the largest acidic crater lake in the world. The water there is so turquoise, you want to jump in immediately, but you probably guessed you should never do that. The fire on that volcano is also blue, the largest blue fire in the world, rising up to 16 feet high. Ever seen a gas stove burning? Here, the principle is basically the same. You can see a rainbow at night, too. Is it myth or a fact? It's true, and there's even a name for this phenomenon, a moonbow. Also called a lunar rainbow, this event occurs extremely rarely. It's similar to a regular rainbow, except when it appears on a clear moony night after a rain shower. There's a thing called a fire rainbow, myth or fact. You bet! It's a beautiful phenomenon when the clouds in the sky are painted all the colors of the rainbow, looking like a fiery, multicolored cascade. It only occurs when the conditions are right, and those are very specific. It's close to the equator, the weather is clear, there are feather-like clouds in the sky, the sun is higher than 58 degrees above the horizon. Such clouds are made of ice crystals. When the sun's rays hit them, the particles refract the light and create a rainbow. Wow! There are rainbow trees, myth or fact. If I made you doubt this, I'm glad, because this one is not photoshopped. This is the rainbow eucalyptus, and their bark may literally have all the rainbow colors. These eucalyptuses shed their bark at different times each year. Every time the old section goes off, the tree first reveals bright green bark that was hiding underneath, and then it may turn any color. There's a whole set of hues: orange, maroon, blue, even purple. Stones can move on their own. Myth or fact? Well, you'd be right to believe me. There's a desert plain in California where rocks move around of their own will. Once this plain used to be the bottom of a lake, but then it dried out and became an arid wasteland. Sometimes rains fall here, flooding the entire valley. When night comes, the temperature drops and the water is covered with a thin layer of ice. When it gets warmer again, the ice breaks into segments and the wind pushes them around the place. Some of these ice shards take small rocks with them. When the ice melts for good and the water evaporates, the only thing that remains are trails left by the rocks, as if they'd moved on their own. Mud puddles can move around. Myth or fact? In fact, a single mud puddle in the world also travels as it wants, and nobody still knows why. It moves at a pace of about 20 feet per year, and it seems to have started its journey near the San Andreas Fault in California. People have tried to stop its march, but couldn't. So far, this creeping natural disaster isn't showing any signs of stopping on its own either. So, there's your pesky, problematic puddle to ponder.
Most people are sure that humans only have 5 senses, but that's not entirely true. Taste, touch, smell, sight, and hearing aren't the only ones we have. Scientists claim that people have between 9 and 20 senses in total. These include thermoception, the sense of warmth, equilibrioception, the sense of balance. There's also the sense of time, although not everyone seems to have that last one. We used to think that there were just 8 different blood types, but in reality, there are over 30 known blood group systems. Here on the bright side, our favorite blood group is B positive. Get it? For every pound of fat you gain, you generate 1 mile of new blood vessels to supply oxygen and nutrients to your body. Your stomach produces a new lining every 6 days to avoid digesting itself. Nerve cells transmit 1,000 nerve impulses a second. They travel between 1 and 268 miles per hour. Our DNA contains 100,000 viruses. Scientists have discovered one that goes back 100 million years. Your body emits visible light. You're the brightest at 4 p.m., and your glow is the least visible at 10 a.m. Unfortunately, this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Sweat is mostly water mixed with proteins, sugars, ammonia, and a lot of other stuff. It even contains tiny amounts of trace metals like copper, zinc, nickel, iron, and so on. What makes sweat taste salty is the sodium it contains. Plus, the more salt you eat, the saltier your sweat is. Your body's trying to get rid of the excess, and the fastest way is to sweat it out. If you walked 2 miles per hour, you'd have to walk for 20 hours straight to lose 1 pound. And it would take you 518 days and 8 hours to circle the equator. Earwax isn't actually wax. It contains fat, skin cells, sweat, and dirt. Your brain gets 3 times bigger over the first year of life and reaches its full maturity when you're 25. 60% of it is fat. Your brain generates around 23 watts of electrical power, which is enough to run a small light bulb. Humans can't really multitask. Your brain can't perform more than 1 action at the same time. It switches between them, which doesn't save time as you might think, but increases the possibility you'll do something wrong and makes the process longer. When you have an exam to take, or you're at work trying to focus on an important task, try chewing gum. Research showed it can help you stay concentrated for longer on tasks that require your full attention. Studies even say that it's a better test aid than caffeine. There's nothing special in the gum, but the act of chewing wakes your brain up. The effect doesn't last long though, just for 20 minutes. Embryos develop fingerprints at 3 months. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Sunburn is the result of radiation exposure. When your body's natural defense mechanism gets overwhelmed trying to fight UV rays, a toxic reaction occurs that results in sunburn. Goosebumps are an evolutionary reflex left over from our ancestors. The release of adrenaline made their hair stand up, and they look scarier to approaching predators. Your body produces 1 to 3 pints of saliva every day. It helps you digest food and fights off infections. You also have a lot of bacteria in your mouth. Yeah, that's right. The average amount of bacteria in a person's mouth is almost the same as the number of people living on Earth. That's hard to digest. Each human has roughly 150,000 hairs on their head. Every strand grows around 1/2 an inch per month. If we added the growth from each hair, it would measure the distance of 10 miles in just 1 year. Your hair is also a lot stronger than you think. A single strand can hold 3 ounces, which is the weight of an apple. If we combined the strength of all the hair on your head, it could support the weight of 2 elephants. Hey, let's try it. The beating sound your heart makes is the clap of valve leaflets opening and closing. Your heart doesn't replicate its cells unless you have an injury. Your corneas are the only part of your body that don't get blood. They get oxygen directly through the air. When you're sitting or standing upright, it's easier for you to recall some positive memories that make you feel good. Some believe it's because sitting up with your back flat boosts blood flow, and your brain gets more oxygen, which helps it function better. The man who has the deepest voice in the world, and that's definitely not me, can produce sounds that humans, including him, can't hear at all. But elephants can hear those sounds. Veins look blue because light has to go through layers of skin and fat to reach them. Your skin scatters a lot of the red portion of white light before it reflects the blood. This leaves only the blue light to bounce back to your eyes. A person who has anosmia is unable to detect smells. Phantosmia is the opposite condition, when someone smells an odor that isn't actually there. The human brain has 100 billion neurons. It's 73% water, and the same is true about the heart. That's why if your brain loses even 2% of its liquid, you start to feel tired. It also makes your memory worse, shortens your attention span, and puts a dampener on your mood. The earliest known person to have had blue eyes lived in the Stone Age, 7,000 years ago. Your right kidney is probably smaller and sits lower down than your left kidney to make room for your liver. By the way, your brain makes sure you don't drink too little or too much water. After you swallow some liquid, your mouth and throat start to fire signals to your brain, telling it to stop drinking. Otherwise, you'd keep gulping down water for the entire 10 to 60 minutes it takes the liquid to get to your cells. Your eyes can see something for a mere 13 milliseconds, and your brain will already process this image. The average blink lasts from 100 to 400 milliseconds. Even though the tongue isn't the strongest muscle in your body, it never gets tired. That's because of the way it's built. It's made up of 8 interwoven muscles. The tongue is the only muscle with ends not connected to bone. Other muscles join 2 bones at both ends because that's how we pull and make a motion. There are around 700 different species of bacteria in your mouth. Over 6 billion of them live there. Your skin is your largest organ. It can cover the surface area of 2 bath towels. It accounts for around 16% of body weight and is around 22 square feet. If you typed 60 words per minute for 8 hours a day, it would take you 50 years to type the human genome. You get tired pretty quickly when you're out in the heat. This happens because your body is trying really hard to keep itself cool, which puts a lot of extra work on it. So you get exhausted and tired, even if you don't do anything physically demanding. Your body has 78 organs, but only 5 of them are essential for survival: the brain, liver, kidney, lungs, and heart. Oh, the phone's ringing. Must be something urgent. At 11 p.m. Only all the gadgets in the house are silent. It's your ears that are ringing. You can also hear some hissing, whistling, buzzing, and even roaring. But all this noise doesn't have an external source. That's why it's known as phantom sounds. They can occur in one or both ears, constantly or from time to time. They're usually most noticeable at night, when nothing distracts you. Women have more taste buds on the surface of their tongues than men do. That's one of the reasons why 35% of ladies and only 15% of guys are super tasters. Those are people who feel flavors more strongly than others. Left-handed people usually prefer to chew on the left side, and right-handed people, well, you guessed it, chew on the right. Even if your fingerprints are damaged, they'll grow back in the same unique pattern. When breathing, a single lung only uses 5% of the oxygen you've inhaled.
You'd need a drop of liquid, a state-of-the-art laser 3D printer, and a couple of hours of work to make the tiniest fidget spinner ever. Its width will be smaller than that of your hair strand. At least researchers at Oak Ridge National Laboratory managed to do just that. A double-stuffed Oreo cookie aren't double-stuffed, in fact. A math teacher weighed 10 regular Oreos, 10 double-stuffed Oreos, 10 mega-stuffed Oreos. Turns out, double-stuffed Oreos are only 1.86 stuffed Oreos. Chipotle peppers aren't some special type of pepper. They're good old jalapenos. Dried and smoked jalapeno is chipotle. In its gaseous form, oxygen is colorless and doesn't have any odor. But when it's liquid or solid, this substance looks pale blue. After being caught by a black hole, a star gets ripped apart by its enormous gravitational forces. Some parts of the star's remains hurtle into the black hole. The rest, in the form of a huge jet of plasma, is ejected with such force that it travels hundreds of light years away. Not so long ago, scientists decided the dino's family tree had to be redrawn for the first time in 130 years. Apparently, two species of dinosaurs had to be grouped together from the very beginning. Those were the lizard-hipped meat-eaters like T-Rex and bird-hipped vegetarians such as the Stegosaurus. A camel can drink up to 30 gallons of water in a bit more than 10 minutes. This water is stored in the animal's bloodstream. As for its fatty hump, it provides the camel with nourishment when there's little food around. Some sea animals like salmon or turtles use our planet's magnetic field to find their way home. Your lungs not only help you breathe, but they also produce blood cells. These cells are responsible for the clotting which stops bleeding. The lungs make more than 10 million of these tiny cells per hour. Only two letters never appear on the periodic table. Those are J and Q. Spin a ball when you drop it and it'll fly through the air while falling. This phenomenon is known as the Magnus effect. You can see it at work in different sports, for example tennis or baseball. Anatidaephobia is the fear that at any point, somewhere in the world, a duck or a goose may be watching you. The person isn't necessarily afraid that the duck or goose will get close to them or even touch them. They just don't like the feeling of being watched. It was first described in a comic strip to show you how anyone can be afraid of anything. Anything can be a phobia. A duck just watching my every move would certainly give me the heebie-jeebies. I might just quack up. Your favorite fruit candies may be shining because they're covered with carnauba wax. Many fruits, especially apples, have a thin layer of this wax too. Not only can it make the candies and fruit appear glossy, but it also makes your car shine. Peaches and nectarines seem different, but in fact, they're pretty much the same fruit. If the fluffiness gene is dominant, we get peaches. If not, we get smooth nectarines. Crows are pretty good at recognizing people's faces and have been found to remember people for a long time. This could be a good or a bad thing depending on how nice you are to them. You don't want to come across a crow that's holding a grudge against you. You probably can't tell which crow is which very easily, so it might be better to play it safe and just give them a little wave. In the city of Yoro in Central America, they have an annual event known as the Rain of Fish. Not that the locals get a choice for it anyways. Every year in May or June, a torrential rainstorm rolls through the town, leaving a mass of fish flopping around in the streets. The phenomenon is believed to be caused by waterspouts or water tornadoes, which drop the fish far from their home. Seafood delivery for free? Yes, please. A single strand of spaghetti onto your fork has a name. It's called a spaghetto. In the Italian language, an I at the end of a word means that it's plural, while an O is singular. This goes for all types, like gnocco instead of gnocchi, fettuccino instead of fettuccine, and raviolo for a single parcel of goodness. Water can freeze and boil at the same time. This is called the triple point. That's when a substance can be solid, liquid, and gaseous at the same time. But there's only one pressure temperature that can make it possible. We're used to ranch dressing being white, but in reality, producers usually add titanium dioxide to make it as white as your sunscreen. Oh, sunscreen producers add some titanium dioxide to their products too. Same with Caesar and blue cheese dressings. Our moon used to have an atmosphere. Several volcanic eruptions happened on Earth's natural satellite around 4 billion years ago. They released immense volumes of gas, trillions of tons. It was so much that the gas didn't have enough time to escape into space. That's how an atmosphere was formed. Cold water heats up faster than hot. The speed of this process depends on the temperature difference between the liquid and its surroundings. That's why cold water needs less time to absorb heat, but it doesn't mean it'll boil faster than hot water. Zealandia is a drowned continent in the Pacific Ocean. It's often described as a continental fragment or a microcontinent. Its area is almost 2 million square miles, about half as big as the US. It went underwater about 23 million years ago. New Zealand is Zealandia's largest part that remains above sea level. People are still evolving. Scientists have been tracking several millions of human anomalies. It turns out some harmful genes are slowly but surely getting filtered out of human DNA. Stars look as if they're twinkling because of the turbulence in Earth's atmosphere. It makes the light from the stars move in a different direction before reaching our eyes, and this looks as if the light is shaking. It takes water 1,000 years to complete its continuous journey around the world. The whole process is known as the global ocean conveyor belt. Bismuth is a brittle, shiny white metal with a pink tinge. If you melt it and then let it cool really slowly, it'll form iridescent cubic crystals. Those Skittles and M&M candies are colored with beetles. Red food dye is made of carmine, which is made with cochineal beetles. Red lipsticks are made with these beetles too. The rocks, metals, and other minerals and things that make up the planet are packed into the ground more tightly in certain places than in others. This has surprising consequences. Gravity varies slightly depending on where you are. How high up you are also has an effect, so if you're at the top of Mount Everest, you'd also weigh slightly less. Don't look down. One scientist has a theory that a substance existed in ancient microbes before chlorophyll, that's the thing that makes plants green, evolved on Earth. This substance reflected sunlight as red and violet colors, which combined to make purple. If true, the young Earth may have been teeming with strange purple-colored critters before all the green stuff appeared. Apples taste better when they're sliced because they're exposed to oxygen. It activates the enzyme called polyphenol oxidase, responsible for ripening and visible browning. The same thing happens when you hit an apple. The oxygen enters the apple through tiny cracks and it starts to ripen. Are you into white chocolate? Well, it's actually not even close to real chocolate. It's basically a mixture of sugar, milk, vanilla, and cocoa butter. Cocoa butter isn't enough for chocolate. It should contain chocolate liquor or powder. The only product that never expires, even if you don't store it in the fridge, is honey. It has a low pH and lots of sugar. That's why organisms that cause spoiling can't live in honey. If two pieces of the same kind of metal touch in space, they bond and get stuck together. It doesn't happen on Earth because water and air keeps pieces apart. People are more honest when they're tired. That's why most confessions are made during late-night conversations. Firefighters usually extinguish flames with wet water. It's water mixed with special wetting agents. These are chemicals that help water soak into objects and spread everywhere more easily. The Sun is an average-sized star, and still it could fit 1,300,000 Earths. The star is also 333,000 times as heavy as our planet. People have been able to spell their emails in Morse code since 2004. That's when a new symbol, @ was added to the code for the first time. The character is actually called a comet and consists of the A and C signals with no break in between.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.